The crystal glass trembled slightly in my hand, its delicate rim catching the soft glow from the chandelier above. The air in the room was thick with polite conversation and the clinking of cutlery, but inside me, everything was starting to crack. Across the table, Devon stood up. The confident way he straightened his tie made it seem like he was preparing for a board meeting, not a celebration of our 12 years of marriage. His voice carried clearly through the room as he thanked friends and colleagues, but something about his tone felt rehearsed, distant. I smiled the kind of smile any wife learns to wear in moments like this. It was a mask, carefully polished to hide the unease swirling beneath. His gaze swept past me, too quick, like he was ticking off a mental checklist. The warmth I had known in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cool professionalism that belonged more to his boardroom than our life together. Around us, the atmosphere was that of Chicago's most exclusive restaurant, the kind of place where a single meal could cost more than what a senior assistant makes in a month. Devon's friends and business partners were all there, key players in building his logistics empire stretching across the Midwest. And then, just a few seats away, sat Haley Monroe, his company's new marketing director. She was striking in a bold red dress, young and confident, with a familiarity in her eyes that made my heart sink. I had noticed them exchanging looks throughout the evening. Subtle but charged, like two people sharing a secret that the rest of us were meant to miss. Maybe no one else saw it, but I did. After years of knowing Devon, I recognized the look of a man hiding something, the way his eyes darted, the way his smile tightened when she entered the room. There was a silent conversation between them, one that didn't include me. Devon raised his glass once more, his voice steady but with an edge I hadn't heard before. He spoke about our journey together, the memories, the shared dreams. My smile held, though inside a small, cold voice whispered that this was a goodbye, not a celebration. And then, as if rehearsed for maximum shock, Haley leaned forward under the table and pulled out something from her purse. My throat tightened. Devon hesitated, and then Haley interrupted, standing tall, her voice ringing clear like a polished speech. "We're getting married," she announced, holding up a sparkling ring. It was a declaration, bold and merciless one, that silenced the room. Utensils stopped mid-air, whispers froze, and eyes locked onto me. Someone even dropped their spoon in disbelief. Devon said nothing, his jaw clenched, eyes strained to look calm, but the tension was written all over his face. I set my glass down gently, refusing to give them the reaction they craved. The silence stretched, every pair of eyes burning into me, waiting for tears or a scream. But I held my ground. Haley's radiant smile seemed to mock me as she claimed she deserved Devon's happiness, that she was lucky to be the one. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. Instead, I smiled, not the polished, polite smile I had worn for years, but one filled with a quiet power, a smile that unsettled Devon more than anything I could say. His usual confidence faltered, his fingers twitching nervously. Haley glanced at me, her composure faltering for a moment. They thought they had won, humiliated me in front of everyone. But what they didn't know was that this was just the opening move of a game they had no idea I was ready to play. The room felt drained, as if the air itself had been sucked out. But I sat tall, lips curved slightly, eyes fixed on Devon. No tears, no rage, just cold, calm resolve. I tapped my glass lightly and said, "Congratulations." The words hung in the air, cutting deeper than any outburst could. Haley hesitated, and Devon's forced smile faltered as he searched for my next move. But there was none. The dinner ended with Devon and Haley slipping away into a waiting car. I didn't watch. Instead, I walked out quietly. But not home. I headed to the office, the place where the real battle would begin. The Kant Tower stood tall in downtown Cleveland, a sleek monolith against the evening sky. The 44th floor, unlisted on the elevator directory, was where the real heart of Ashford logistics beat quietly, away from the public eye. This was my domain, the secret control room that Devon never knew existed. I swiped my fingerprint across the security panel, and the doors slid open silently, as they always did. Only a select few knew I walked these halls, Reuben, our family lawyer who had been with us since my father's day, and Nana, my private assistant and closest confidant since graduating from Columbia's MBA program. My father, Richard Belmont, had left me more than just a company when he died suddenly. When I was 24, he handed me a legacy, a web of private equity funds, control over Ashford Logistics, and a blueprint for navigating the male-dominated world of corporate power. No one takes a young woman seriously, he had warned me in our final meeting in New York. Not even if you carry the Belmont name. Don't fight for attention. Let them underestimate you. Then use it to take them places they never saw coming. That advice became my shield and weapon. When Devon applied for the COO role at Ashford Logistics, I was the one who approved his file through a shell company to keep my hands clean. I provided the main capital, controlled the funds, and even nominated him as CEO. For 3 years, he played the part, flaunting his supposed business genius while I watched from the shadows. The silent wife was the one who truly held the reins. Sitting in my unmarked office, I let my fingers brush across the smooth leather of my chair. On the wall hung a charcoal abstract painting, just decoration to most. But behind it lay a hidden safe. I opened it carefully, revealing the original transfer deed of Ashford Logistics. The red seal of Belmont Capital Holdings stood out clearly. The sole owner wasn't Devon. It was me, Alexis Belmont Pierce. I snapped photos of the documents, sending them instantly to Reuben with a short message, activate Phase 2. The plan was no longer theoretical. Tonight was the night I stopped hiding and began reclaiming everything that was mine. On the laptop before me was the presentation Devon had prepared for the upcoming board meeting, a blueprint to fire loyal employees and restructure the company in ways that suited his ambitions. Not the legacy. I rewrote the entire thing, replacing his name with mine. By morning, every shareholder would have the updated version, bearing the name of their new interim CEO, Alexis Belmont Pierce. I closed the laptop and caught my reflection in the glass. This was no longer the quiet woman standing behind Devon at dinners, swallowing insults and pretending not to notice the betrayals. This was a woman they had never truly seen, folks in, calculated and ready to take back control. Devon thought he humiliated me tonight, but he had no idea I was never behind him. I had chosen the shadows until it was time for the spotlight to belong to me. The office was quiet, almost eerily so, when I stepped onto the 44th floor the next morning. At 7:30 a.m., sharp. The building hummed with the usual rhythm of a corporate giant waking up, but today the power dynamics were about to shift. Protocol Artemis. A contingency plan born from years of preparation and whispered conversations with my father was no longer just theory, it was active. The system required 3 layers of authentication: fingerprint, facial recognition, and a one-time passcode stored on a USB that I had worn around my neck for years, hidden like a talisman. After the final scan, I typed in the secret code, and the screen confirmed access to all administrative dashboards with CEO authority. It was a moment of quiet triumph. This was the power Devon never knew I held, as I absorbed the control I had reclaimed. Nana walked in carrying a tablet with real-time security updates. She looked up at me, and I nodded. Devon had just tried to log in from a device at the Westlake office. Access denied. No words were needed. Phase 1 was complete. The next step was to bring the evidence into the light. For months, I had suspected financial irregularities involving 2 federal transport projects managed by Haley. I had warned Devon, but he brushed it off. Now, I understood it wasn't ignorance he was part of the scheme. Nana handed me a thick dossier she had compiled over 3 months, more than 90 emails, exposing money laundering through fake contracts, 6 audio recordings, capturing Haley, negotiating kickbacks, and 3 digital documents bearing Devon's signature, implicating him directly. I printed hard copies, sealed them in a red confidential folder, and called Reuben. Deliver these to every board member in person within 2 hours. No emails, I instructed. No questions. By 10 a.m., Devon had called my phone 8 times. I let it ring. He left a voicemail pleading for calm, calling it a misunderstanding and warning me to stop before things spiraled out of control. Then came a message from Haley Bold, defiant. She warned me I wasn't winning, that I was just the wife, and she was the future. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded both messages to Ruben with a note. File these as supporting material in case of complaints. Later that afternoon, I walked into the emergency board meeting. Devon entered, expecting to unveil his plan to expand into Asia, only to freeze when he saw me sitting at the head of the table. Red folders lay before every chair, detailed evidence that would change everything. Alexis Devon stammered, trying to regain control. The CFO spoke calmly, reminding the room that as primary executive owner, I had the right to call this meeting. Devon forced a smile, calling it a coup, but no one was fooled. I slid my folder toward the chairman, directing him to page 13. The room fell silent except for the sound of pages flipping, tension thickening. Haley's name appeared on every incriminating document. Finally. The chairman cleared his throat. Facing Devon. Mr. Marcus, we will require a formal written explanation within 24 hours. Devon's face drained of color. He glanced at me but dared not speak my name. I gathered my files and stood. This meeting is adjourned. I said, as acting CEO, I recommend a full audit of contracts from the past 6 months. No one spoke as I left the room. The whispers behind me only confirmed what I already knew. This was just the beginning. The boardroom was heavy with tension as I stepped back into Ashford Logistics' inner sanctum. The air was thick with anticipation, eyes darting between me and Devon, who still wore the mask of confidence. But the cracks were unmistakable. This wasn't just another meeting, it was the moment the truth would finally unravel. And the fate of the company would be decided. Devon's footsteps faltered as he saw me seated at the head of the table. For years, he'd believed he controlled the narrative, the empire, and everyone in it. But today, that illusion shattered. The red folders in front of each board member carried the weight of betrayal. Audio files, emailed threads, all painting a damning picture of deceit and corruption. His mouth opened, trying to muster a response, but the room fell silent before he could utter a word. The chairman, Mr. Scott, adjusted his glasses and began to speak in a tone measured but firm. Mrs. Pierce, as the majority shareholder and acting CEO, you have presented substantial evidence implicating Devon Marcus in serious breaches of company trust. One by one, board members flipped through the evidence, their expressions shifting from disbelief to concern, some even shock. Devon's gaze searched the room, but no ally met his eyes. The room that once celebrated his leadership now regarded him as a liability. I spoke clearly, calmly. Devon was never authorized to transfer shares, approve major projects, or appoint senior staff without my consent. These clauses were violated repeatedly over the past 3 years. I gestured toward the charts displayed on the screen behind me, illustrating the corporate structure with my name clearly marked as the legal owner. A seasoned board member, skeptical, broke the silence. We were never aware of your involvement behind the scenes. Why keep it hidden? I met his question head-on. I stayed silent to protect the company's stability. But when the truth threatens to destroy everything, silence becomes a liability. The room nodded subtly, understanding the delicate balance I had maintained until now. Then came the hardest blow, the revelation of Victoria Hale's involvement. Her image flashed on the screen, a glamorous woman caught in the act of leaking confidential documents to our fiercest competitor, Southern Cross Shipping. Her reckless betrayal was no secret anymore. Devon's face paled further, and murmurs swelled. A shareholder called out, "This isn't restructuring. This is sabotage," I concluded with quiet authority. As the acting CEO and rightful owner, I am requesting Devon's immediate suspension and an independent investigation supported by Thompson and Lee law offices. No one dared to argue. Devon lowered his head, fists clenched, powerless to defend himself. The board meeting adjourned swiftly, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. As I walked out, the weight of the moment settled over me. This wasn't just corporate politics, it was the reclaiming of a legacy, the start of a new chapter where truth and justice would finally prevail. The days that followed were swift and ruthless. a stark reminder that in the world of power, hesitation is a luxury no one can afford. Devon, once the untouchable CEO, was now a man stripped of influence and dignity. His calls went unanswered, his access to company systems was blocked by Protocol Artemis, the same silent guardian I had activated to protect what was mine. His personal assets were frozen under a court order, leaving him stranded in a world where money once opened every door. I still remember the image vividly, Devon pacing the lobby of Ashford Logistics headquarters, phone pressed to his ear, face flushed with frustration and disbelief. The employees who used to flatter him passed by without a glance, indifferent, even hostile. The black BMW he had driven for years, registered under Belmont Estate control, sat unused. The expensive watches and credit cards, once symbols of his success, were now useless tokens of a life unraveling. Victoria Hale's downfall was quieter, but no less devastating. After the board meeting exposed her betrayal, she vanished from social media, disappearing like a ghost from the industry she once flaunted. Southern Cross Shipping, the company she had supplied with stolen information, terminated her contract immediately, citing a breach of confidentiality. The silence that followed spoke volumes. No public statements, no denials, just an abrupt erasure from every major industry association and panel. Her reputation, once glossy and carefully constructed with charm and red lipstick, lay in ruins. Invitations to conferences disappeared. Third-party contracts were cancelled without hesitation. And doors that once opened easily were now slammed shut. I heard through the grapevine that she was spotted dragging a suitcase out of a Manhattan service department after her credit card was declined. A stark image of a woman stripped of status and resources, forced to face the consequences of her choices alone. Devon tried to reach me, once by email, once by letter. Both were returned unopened. Even a call to my mother was met with a cold reminder. She owes you nothing, and there's nothing left to say. I didn't celebrate their fall. There was no satisfaction in watching people lose everything. But I understood the cost of their betrayal, not just in money or power, but in dignity and trust. Once those are gone, everything else is just smoke and mirrors. The morning of my first official day as CEO dawned crisp and clear. The familiar lobby of Ashford Logistics headquarters felt different this time. No longer the backdrop to Devon's reign, but the stage for my new beginning. I stepped in wearing a simple ivory suit, hair neatly pinned back, carrying an expression so composed it made even long-time insiders hesitate. The whispers began almost immediately. Who was this woman stepping into the spotlight so confidently? Even the head of communications, who had once leaked sensitive information to Victoria Hale, a close ally of Devon, lowered his eyes in respect. The accounting manager, who had once turned a blind eye to Devon's personal expenses, fumbled nervously to greet me. I gave neither smile nor nod. I walked straight past, my steps purposeful and steady. Within 30 minutes, the 15th floor conference room filled with senior staff and cameras broadcasting live to every branch nationwide. I stood behind the podium, looking directly into the camera lens. The moment was mine. But I knew it carried the weight of years of silence and unseen battles. Good morning, I began, my voice steady and clear. I'm Alexis Pierce. This may be the first time you hear my name as a leader, but the truth is, I have been running Ashford Holdings for 14 years under the internal name Artemis Trust. There was no applause, no immediate response. But out of the 15 people in the room, not one looked away. I stayed silent to protect the company's stability. I continued. But recent events proved that silence only empowers those who seek to harm us, starting today. Ashford enters a new era. Behind me, the screen lit up with a new logo, a fusion of the Artemis Trust symbol and Winston Global, once our fiercest rival. The merger was more than a business move. It was a statement. Devon had long resisted this collaboration, but that chapter was over. We chose transparency over secrecy, efficiency over favoritism, and talent over connections. That declaration silenced some skeptical faces in the room. They knew exactly what I meant. 2 hours later, I signed orders suspending 2 employees pending investigation for dishonesty and terminating 1 for manipulating financial reports to curry favor with Devon. No warnings, no long HR processes, just decisive action. A message went out across the entire system. The Devon and Victoria era was over. That afternoon, I met with the Winston Global team at the Hilton, joined by our financial partner flying in from London. Together, we finalized a $200 million investment to restructure our sustainable supply chain for the coming year. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was the exact proposal I had presented to Devon 2 years earlier, only to be dismissed with a sexist comment, "Women don't understand logistics." Today, I signed the deal in my own name. The woman once dismissed as just the CEO's wife was now the highest-ranking executive of one of the largest logistics firms on the East Coast. As I left the meeting room, a young woman from Winston approached me hesitantly. "Alexis!" "I read your story," she said softly. "Thank you for refusing to stay silent." I smiled not from victory, but because I knew I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was opening doors for others, for those who had been told to wait their turn for far too long. Weeks after announcing the merger and stepping fully into my role, I returned to the old family office on Fairmont Street, my father George Pierce's private sanctuary. The third-floor room, untouched for over a decade, was a time capsule of the era when the company was born. Wood-paneled ceilings, black-framed windows, and leather-bound shelves lined the walls, a stark contrast to the high-tech world I now navigated. Yet, in that quiet space, I felt the pulse of the past, a reminder of where I came from and what I needed to build. I opened the left drawer of my father's desk and reached inside. Wrapped in a velvet blue cloth lay a silver signet ring engraved with the original Ashford crest, a keepsake passed down through generations. Beneath it rested a modest steel Rolex, the last gift my father gave me before his untimely death. I slid the ring onto my right hand, watching as the dull stone caught the fading sunlight streaming through the window. In that moment, memories flooded back, sitting on his lap as a child, listening to his stories about how a single contract could shape the destiny of a company and, sometimes, a family. Later that day, I held a private press briefing in that very office. There were no flashy logos, no grandiose set designs, just me, standing before the camera with the weight of a legacy on my shoulders. I spoke plainly. I once hid my identity to protect what my father built. But today, I reclaim that legacy as the rightful heir. I hereby restore the Ashford Legacy Office, the original headquarters founded by George Pierce in 1972. The announcement sent ripples through the industry. Veterans and rivals alike acknowledged the shift. Financial media dubbed me the silent daughter who reclaimed a dynasty. But reclaiming the past wasn't enough. I needed to build a future. That vision took shape in the restructuring of the Ashford Foundation. Once a mere scholarship fund under Devon's reign, I transformed it into a dynamic platform dedicated to empowering young women in business leadership and finance. The first initiative was the Athena program, a leadership training series designed specifically for girls from minority communities across the Midwest. The application process was simple: no GPA requirements, no recommendation letters, just a self-recorded video explaining why they believed they deserved the chance. One video stopped me cold. A young brown-skinned girl stood in a worn garage in Ohio, her voice trembling but determined. "I just want one chance to prove that women weren't born to be background characters." I called her that very night, inviting her to speak at the program's launch, a message to an industry still riddled with bias. "Women don't wait to be chosen," I said. "They build their own paths so others don't have to wait." That day, I became more than a CEO reclaiming a company. I became a symbol of quiet strength, resilience, and change. People asked if I planned to remarry. I smiled and said, "I've just married myself again, and that relationship deserves my full attention." Months later, at the Women in Capital Leadership Conference in New York, an organizer asked how I wanted to be introduced. I paused and answered softly, "Call me Alexis Pierce." The woman once erased from the story was now holding the brush to paint her own future. My journey reminds us all, silence does not mean weakness. Betrayed, dismissed, and underestimated. I didn't seek loud revenge. I gathered truth and prepared each step carefully to reclaim what was mine. Those who underestimate us often hold the key to real change. And when we rise, we don't just demand justice, we redefine power and resilience. Returning to the old family office felt like stepping back into time, a quiet place untouched by the storms that had swept through the company and my life. Yet, as I stood there, the weight of history mingled with the pulse of new possibilities. The legacy my father built was not just a foundation to cling to, but a platform from which to leap forward. That afternoon, standing before the camera in that modest room, I no longer needed to hide. The silver signet ring on my hand caught the fading light, a symbol of continuity and strength. I spoke clearly. Without theatrics, I once concealed my identity to protect the legacy left by my father. But today, I claim it openly. I hereby restore the Ashford Legacy Office, the original headquarters founded in 1972. The world listened. Industry veterans, who once saw me as invisible, now recognized the quiet force I had become. The financial press labeled me the silent daughter who reclaimed a dynasty. But I knew that reclaiming wasn't enough. The past was a chapter, not the whole story. With that realization came a new mission to build a future that was fairer, stronger, and more inclusive. The Athena program, the Ashford Foundation's flagship initiative, was just the beginning. It was a pledge to nurture the next generation of leaders, especially those who, like me, had once been dismissed or underestimated. This journey wasn't just about business or power. It was about rewriting the narrative of who belongs at the table and who holds the brush to paint the future. As I look back on the battles fought and the victories won, I know the path ahead will bring new challenges. But now, I walk it with quiet confidence. No longer the shadow behind a man, but the architect of my own destiny. So, what about Devon and those who betrayed me? Their chapter has closed swiftly, justly, and without regret. The empire I now lead is built on transparency, resilience, and a vision that extends beyond old grudges. I invite you to reflect on this journey, on betrayal and strength, on silence and voice. Share your thoughts, your stories. Because sometimes, the greatest power lies in reclaiming who we are and choosing what we build next.